Welcome everyone to the story of another road trip and another racetrack. This time, the road trip takes us and our trusty Acura NSX almost exactly 1,000 miles from the rolling hills of East Tennessee across the deep south to just outside of Austin, Texas. There, 10 miles south of the Capitol building downtown, we find the Lone Star State's crown jewel of motorsports and what will be our first modern Formula One track, Circuit of the Americas. As the sun rose on our first day at COTA, we were greeted with a reminder that this was a Chin Track Days event, as the drivers' meeting kicked off with the sounding of the conch and a Texas-appropriate horn. After a pep talk standing in front of what was the Mercedes garage back in October, it was time to head out for our first laps of the 31st track on our Lap of the World. Alright, well hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World. We are pulling onto the pit lane for our first real session at Circuit of the Americas. Pulling out here, driving down the pit lane that just saw an Acura win here late last year towards the end of the Formula One season, as the RedBull Hondas got rebranded for the race on the American soil with the Acura livery, and Max went on to win that one. We are not here to win anything today. Our prize is taking our car home in one piece. So we're here to learn and experience our first modern F1 track. While we await our release signal at Pit Out, I wanted to mention our host for this event, Chin Track Days. One of the largest track day providers in the US, they are one of very few organizations to facilitate non-professional drivers like us taking laps of COTA. They aren't sponsoring this video in any official sense, but I like the people in charge, so this one's on the house. For more COTA dates, as well as something like 60 other events at 14 other top-tier tracks, check them out at chintrackdays.com. Now let's get to driving. So we've been out for a sighting lap. This is not entirely our first session, but it's our first actual hot session. It's already slightly underway. We're kind of at the back of the grid there. It was by design. Hopefully we're not going to be in too many people's way. Although I did see, I think, a GT2 RS lining up behind me there, so I will be watching my mirrors. But for now, we're going to find the track, find the line, and see if we can have some fun as we go into the S's for our first time with kind of intent. Come out here. And this, I did find in the sighting laps that this, I will say that whatever you want to call, whatever you talk about it not being a true sim, Forza 7 did a pretty faithful job of recreating the track, I think. So far, the lines that I found here that I was using there are pretty accurate. So we're going to get up to speed here, and I'm sure you'll see some more competent laps later. But for now, we're just kind of going to get around here and see if we can work our way up to speed and not hold anybody up too much in the process. As I point by a pair of Stuttgart's finest, it's worth pointing out that I'm actually driving in Chin's Intermediate Solo, color-coded blue group here. I'm not the guy from the meme, but with my experience and former credentialing, I tend to gravitate towards the fastest, or rather the most experienced run groups with most organizations. In this case, though, I didn't mind, as even the Intermediate Solo group was an entertaining exercise for me in traffic management for my meager 260 wheel horsepower against such hardware as Porsche GT2s, 3s, and 4s, C8 Corvettes, a gaggle of McLarens including a Senna GTR, a V8 supercar spec Mustang race car, and a handful of Formula cars. So as much as I had to watch my mirrors, I was still able to have a ton of fun on what is a really varied and challenging circuit. At 3.4 miles or 5.5 kilometers long, COTA sits just inside the top 10 longest tracks in North America. Packing 20 turns into that length means that you're pretty busy for most of the lap. Getting this out of the way, yes, Circuit of the Americas is one of Hermann Tilke's designs, and it does draw from the Tilke playbook seen across some other F1 tracks. But if you jump on the Formula One neckbeard bandwagon and write it off on that basis alone,
you are doing yourself a serious disservice. We drove 1,000 miles to lap COTA, and after driving 1,000 miles back home, my only regret is not pushing the track limits in a few more turns to squeeze another second or so out of a lap. I would hand on heart rate it among the most fun and engaging tracks that I've driven thus far. Turns 2 through 10 are properly challenging stuff, but very rewarding when you get them right, and turns 17 through 20 have a wonderful flow to them in my opinion. The long straights and fast sections terminating into hairpins leads to better passing in Formula 1, but it means that COTA is harder on your brakes than most, and the track's prodigious width means that there isn't quite obviously a one best line through some sections. It does tempt you to push hard, but the track supports that temptation in most places with ample paved runoff, put in place as part of its homologation to host Formula 1. Now here's what as much pushing as I was inclined to do looked like in the form of my quickest, if not cleanest, lap of the weekend. Exiting turn 20 to start a new lap of COTA, I remembered that I'm an American and didn't start in karting at age 3, so short of becoming a billionaire, my F1 hopes died early. But we can at least imagine the glory as we cross the line and head up the hill to turn 1. The slope here will help you under braking, but it can be hard to judge your turn-in point, especially in the early morning hour with the sun in your eyes. Turning in, you want to clip on the inside curb, but watch out, there is a little bit of a bump that can upset the car. Track out, and then get back to mid-track, although there are multiple lines you could take through here. I found mid-track most comfortable for my car. And then you want to carry as much speed as you can in here, setting yourself up for the Silverstone-inspired S's. You can probably use more curb than even I did here to give yourself a straighter line through, although be careful because on your exit from the S's into turn 6 here, it is off camber, and the new pavement led to some struggle for grip. Turning through 7, you can use more curb than I did there, and again here on 8, which will give you a straighter shot over the top of 9, and just remember that there is room here for you to track out more than I have done. Turn 10 should be flat out in all but the fastest cars, or actually especially if you have any downforce, and that leads you down into another kind of ambiguously wide braking zone here. And again, the key point is to get a late apex here so you can get on the gas early, because this is a very long straight. Now take a breather here, check your gauges, check your mirrors. You'll see me check my mirrors repeatedly given the number of very fast cars in my group. I was trying not to hold anyone up. I peak here at 130 miles an hour in my car, and probably closer to 140 indicated, before having to jump hard on the brakes because the next turn is a hairpin. You can get on the gas early here to track out. Again, as I'm checking my mirrors here, as I see a couple of cars closing in on me, as that Viper, I think, blew his braking zone just a little bit. The next 2 turns are a little bit tricky. You want to get close to the first one, and then unwind and start adding throttle all the way through this next section until you get to here, where you can take your option of diamonding off that corner or taking a kind of decreasing radius apex. We get this here Australian V8 supercar spec Mustang around as we enter into kind of a carousel section here. We're just trying to balance the car with as much grip as you can manage. Tracking out here, and then you want to get back track right. Again, take more curb on the inside to turn 19. Exit, again, you have more room here than I used. You developing a theme before we come back up to turn 20. Now turn 20, you want to get done you want to be very tidy here. It's a tricky turn to get very right, and it took me several sessions to do so. Then I have another opportunity to clear myself of traffic before starting a new lap. Please note those cars have like 700 horsepower, so I'm not lifting at all there. And that is a lap of Circuit of the Americas, my quickest, if not cleanest, of the weekend. That 2 minutes 40 seconds and change, albeit over a minute slower than the most famous Acura badged car around COTA, still checks out for respectable but not spectacular for a 30-year-old car on street tires. I had a projected best some 2 seconds better than that, and suspect more was possible taking a few more liberties with track limits, and without the need to be a good neighbor and give up the odd turn to faster cars. Getting back to that FIA homologation though, as of this video's release, COTA is one of only 2 FIA Grade 1 circuits on American soil, the other being Indianapolis, with Miami International currently not yet complete and planned to be temporary at that. With that top grade comes the ability to host F1 races, and with the ability to host F1 races comes the obligation to live up to the F1 yardstick for facilities. That is to say, this is no grassroots track. Situated on about 375 of a 1,500-acre plot, COTA's construction rang up a $400 million bill between groundbreaking in 2010 and opening day in 2012. There's an expectation of spectacle around Formula One, and COTA lives up to that. In addition to the very patriotic runoff areas, COTA boasts a massive garage and hospitality structure, 70-foot-tall grandstands along the start-finish straight with ample seating elsewhere, and a 250-foot-tall observation tower that also serves as a backdrop to an amphitheater concert venue and stadium. The 2021 US Grand Prix actually set an attendance record for all of Formula One, with nearly 400,000 spectators visiting the track over the 3-day weekend, with 140,000 granted entry to the race on Sunday. Of course, unlike 2021's heated championship battle, there were only a few people watching as we achieved a milestone of our own, checking off another first on our list with a modern Formula One circuit in our inaugural event for 2022. It's a good time to drive the track as well, with large sections recently repaved. The surface for most of the track is immaculate, a bump after the apex of Turn 1, the only blemish that I noticed with my street car suspension. As much as I can highly recommend a lap of COTA as a driving experience, and the facility leaves absolutely nothing to be desired, if you do decide to visit Circuit of the Americas, gird thy loins, because no event here is cheap. With that said, I 100% think it's worth the trip if you have the means, and Austin does offer more than just a racetrack as a destination. COTA is only 20 minutes from downtown, so you could easily stay in a walkable area for evening entertainment and dining, or plan extra days for sightseeing in the area. In closing, we had an amazing time kicking off 2022 in Austin, driving Circuit of the Americas with our friends at Shen Track Days, and we hope you enjoyed coming along for the ride. Stay tuned for more from COTA, as well as Palm Beach International in the coming weeks. Until then, I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World, and we'll see you in the next video, if not at the track.